Hello everyone, this is Michelle Sarmento. Welcome to my channel. There's a lot of fashion history, travel, trends, and a lot more. And today we're going to talk about the transition fashion between the 1980s and 1990s. Before we get into the 50s, 60s, clash first. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie
Hairspray.
Have you ever gone to the hair show? And that is about this bunch of girls who live in this town who are very conservative. You know, this movie takes place in the early 1960s, but these girls are still dressed like very 1950s with the big puffy crinoline dresses. And it was this other girl who was more like a rebel. And it was this TV show contest. I think it was a dance contest, and these girls were more conservative. You know, they did a very classical 1950s act, and this other girl was more like a rebel, you know, shocked everybody with a totally different act. It was very 1960s. Actually, in the early 60s or late 50s, people didn't want to accept the new decade, the new fashion, because they maybe found it really bizarre. Actually, people in the early 60s who started wearing like very poppy hairs, the bouffant, and like very heavy makeup and all that. You know, they maybe found it really bizarre or ridiculous. You know, because the 1950s, you know, was very proper, you know, and very conservative. And the 1960s was like definitely a revolution, we can say. So. I'm not saying that it happened exactly the same between the 80s and 90s, but I'm saying it was very similar in the way that many people in the 80s, they didn't want to accept the fashion from the 90s. What is that? Because the 1980s fashion hit really well. And when I say hit really well, it's because it was people in the 80s thought that the 80s fashion was never going to change, was never going to pass. They actually, if you go back right now to the 1980s, if you go, let's see, 1988, at the end of the decade, and you say, you know what, in the 90s, and after that, people dress again, like back in the 70s and 60s and beyond. Before that, people will laugh. They would say, no way, because the 1970s and the 1960s so ridiculous, so old, so retro, that no way, you know, they thought the 1980s was gonna just evolve like that. So that's what I made the connection there, because it was something like that, you know, back in actually, let's go back to 1979, before the 80s started. You know, I remember there was a magazine that I bought because I used to collect old magazines from the past to see how the fashion was changing. Unfortunately, I lost all those magazines in the flow. But I remember this magazine from 1979. They were saying what was in and what was out. I don't know if you remember those magazines. They were saying this is in, this is out. And in 1979, they were saying bell bottoms are out and platforms were out. So if you want to be in fashion in 1979, no more bell bottoms and no more platforms. Probably a lot of people still wear them, you know, in the early, probably 81, 82. But the 1980s fashion was really well accepted. Now, let's go back how everything started to transition from 1980s to 1990s. 1988, you'll see there started a lot of influence of like palazzos, like pants, you know, like they were white again, like in the 1970s, but it was probably more like cotton, with no polyester, more like with a lot of flow. I mean, it was a little bit different. And they started to also use a lot of influence in their shoes and in hair, you know, like more like 1960s, early 70s. But actually, it was not very well accepted until the 1990s. One of the pioneers of the 90s fashion, it was the group called B-52s. I bet you know that group is very famous. They use their own style. It looks very like late 50s, early 60s, kind of like that. But I don't think people really copy their style in the 1980s, maybe their pants. But in the 1990s, their fashion was very well accepted, and people actually start dressing like that. And I remember there is a group called Delight, They got a famous hit in 1990. They use a very retro early 1970s style. A lot of people found it really ridiculous the way they dress, because they say they dress really funky and very different. But actually, no, they were the pioneers, of that new trend of fashion that is starting to become really popular in the 1990s. Women told the ones that in the 90s they didn't want to dress like in the 90s. They still were dressing like in the 80s. They were already in like 94, 95. They were still wearing big hair with hairspray. They still doing perms because they didn't want to accept the 1990s fashion. Actually, in the American horror history, it's called 1984. There's a scene, they were finishing the 1980s, and there were people saying, "Oh, I don't want this new go-go fashion." But like in 1989, it was a new trend, and actually, eventually, most of the people ended up accepting it. And it's so funny because after that, the 80s actually never came back. I mean, there's a lot of trends that actually repeat from the 80s, but never exactly like the 80s. But a lot of trends from the 60s and 70s are exactly the same. So we can start from the hairstyles for women, Right now, we are already in 2022, and it's still women wear the hair like in the 70s, with like part in the middle and like very straight hair. People don't want to do perms anymore. If you go back to the 80s, you say, oh, people in a few years, women were like their hair by the middle again with very straight hair. They were like, no way, that's so ridiculous. That's so the past. But you see, that's always fashion, and I'm good at predicting that because I was very young, and I remember, that I was doing drawings, and I was seeing, people in the 90s, they were dressed like this, and they were making fun of me, and they were saying, no way, you always like to do drawings like in the past. They say like very retro. It's not because I was seeing a lot of people have a good eye for that, and actually there's a very good artist that have that eye. One of them is Madonna. Madonna is just a visionary. Madonna always, if you see Madonna, always see beyond. So Madonna in the 90s, she was one of the singers, to start, using that new fashion, The fashion that has, you can say, conquered or have governed the world fashion or have survived for many years is the influence in the 1960s and 70s until today. And if you see a lot of trends from today, from 22, they're going back and get into the 70s. If you see Gucci's doing a lot of that, Versace too, a lot of very colorful colors, Actually, the 20s, I feel it's going to be like a little 1970s. It's going to be a little bit about it. It's going to be a very funky decade. And I think it's more of because of social media, because right now people can really see what's going on and everything's more acceptable. Back then, it was only what you see on TV, what you only see in magazines. So it was harder for people to adapt to a new fashion because they were embarrassed to use it because not everybody was using it. They were waiting until everybody using it so they can use it. And today, how everything is more open, you can see everything was going on right now in this moment in Paris and New York. It's a different time, so that's why fashion is becoming really global and more extravagant than in the past. Today, you can just create your own style if you want, and you can see what people are wearing in other parts of the world. You can just copy that if you like it. So it's a different time. It's a more open, and we'll see what happens. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to follow for more fashion history, travel trends. This is your host, Michelle Sarmento. Until next time.